discussing all of their issues, and they were happy with all of it. It was all cool at the end of it. But I was like, oh, okay, they're all
Right.
yours is just way. Actually, yours is. I'm aware. Legally, yours is way bigger than mine. Because you're changing the law. We're asking them to rewrite the law. That's what you're saying. It says every time I go, I was like, yeah, it's supposed to be.
Well, they said it.
So aren't you guys trying to get that added into the zone? Just get because the zoning is already business support services. And you're trying to get catering added to that, right?
Ready, let's, all right, we're going to get started again, please.
Me too.
7:11. All right, good evening. The hour being 7:11 on March 11th, 2024. I'd like to call to order the Village of Brookfield Committee of the Whole meeting. Bridget, can we have a roll call for the committee meeting, please?
Trustee Ketchmark?
Here.
Trustee Cote?
Here.
Trustee Hendricks?
Here.
Trustee Niramatsu?
Here.
Trustee Gahuli?
Here.
Trustee Kaluzny?
Here.
President Garvey.
Here. Thank you, Bridget. Okay, we're going to get right into, we have several exciting things up tonight, and the first is, and I'm going to turn it over to our Assistant Village Manager, Stevie Ferrari, to introduce the members of the Conservation Commission and their draft sustainability plan. What my intention is to have Stevie do the introduction, have Conservation, you run your presentation the way you want it, but I will open it up to public comment at the end of this discussion item. There'll be general public comment at the end of the Committee of the Whole meeting, but if anyone in the audience wants to comment at the end of this presentation, I will open it up at that point. So, Stevie?
Thank you, President Garvey. I would just like to, in going into the background of the sustainability plan and how we got there, staff cannot emphasize enough how appreciative we are of the thought and consideration and due diligence that went into getting to this point by the conservation members. They took their unique professional knowledge and brought it to this plan in drafting it. And the due diligence in stakeholder feedback and crafting what we have here for the draft plan is just very appreciated by village staff. And I want to recognize them for all of their hard work and effort. It is very impressive what they've been able to pull together here. But to share some highlight and background of our sustainability plan, did start back in 2019. At that time, the village board adopted the MMC, or Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus Greenest Region Compact. We do participate in these monthly meetings as a regular occurrence. From 2019 into March of 2020, the village board referred the Conservation Commission to consider the task of developing a sustainability plan for the community. In 2021, the village board endorsed the MMC's climate action plan for the region, which did allow the Conservation Commission to get further direction on where their plan was headed. In 2022, the village board signed an MOU to participate in the Cross-Community Climate Collaborative, which allows us to work with other communities in the western suburbs to work collaboratively on sustainability initiatives. And staff does participate in those C4 meetings to get some further insight and direction on sustainability across multiple topics. This allowed the Conservation Commission in 2022 to begin in earnest to undertake the sustainability plan project. And as I kind of stated at the beginning, the due diligence that went in from step one was evident. They reviewed all of our village adopted plans to identify any and all sustainability initiatives. Those plans are listed both within the presentation and the memo. That's not light reading, and the conservation really dug in to identify sustainability within each of those plans, which was very much appreciated. The project progressed to include a public meeting in spring of '23. This was an in-person open workshop format We had over 50 people from the public attending that, and they were engaged one-on-one within the 9 priority areas identified within the plan. And this allowed them to further develop a draft, which they provided to staff, and we had multiple staff comments and editing, including attending a conservation meeting so that we can speak to those edits and comments in person for clarification. And the Conservation Commission then took all of those staff edits and comments to get the draft plan that you see before you within the memo. I'd like to invite the conservation members to come on up. There is a presentation to do a general overview of the plan. All board members received the plan previous to posting to allow some due diligence on your end as well, to take a look at all those goals, initiatives, and craft any edits or comments that you might have yourselves. So I'd invite the conservation to come on up.
Hello, my name is Bridget Jakubiak. I am Chair of the Conservation Commission. I'd first like to thank the trustees for their ongoing commitment to sustainability through so many of the plans, if you can go to the next slide, that you've already approved that have strong sustainability elements. And I think the next slide as well. And these are some of the items that Stevie already highlighted. The Conservation Commission would also like to thank you for entrusting us with the challenge of developing this plan. We've been unbelievably blessed to have the team of really dedicated people who brought a tremendous amount of expertise and time and passion to the plan. And I felt very grateful to be able to be part of this process. We'd also like to thank the village staff, residents, and the Chamber of Commerce, and many other subject matter experts who've helped us shape the plan along the way. I'm gonna ask one of our Conservation Commissioner experts, Jen Nelson, to share a few comments before we get into the nuts and bolts.
Thank you. Jen Nelson, one of your newest Conservation Commissioners in Brookfield, so I get to make comments on hard work that was done before I was even on the commission. But I just wanted to take a minute to say I work in the field of sustainability, supporting municipalities across Illinois, and this has been truly a pleasure to be a part of this process and to get the kind of input and collaboration with village staff, very honest conversations about what's needed to advance things. I just want to say thank you for that. And I want to make sure that it's really clearly understood that having a sustainability plan for a municipality paves the way for so many other pieces of work. You've already heard, and you're going to hear more from Kevin about how it's embedded in plans that have already been adopted. But I want to point out that many of us, I've lived in Brookfield for 20 years, many of us deal with flooding on a regular basis, whether our streets, our sidewalks, our alleys, or our basements. Sustainability planning and looking at how we're managing our trees and our green space work to mitigate flooding. So this is a plan that's going to have a benefit for every resident in Brookfield. Another thing to think about too is that any action that we take on energy efficiency or looking at renewable energy purchasing is financially the right way to be moving as a community. Fossil fuel energy is going to become more and more and more expensive as years go by. So putting this plan into action and making those changes now is an important step for us to take as a fiscally responsible community too.
Thank you, Jen. I'd like to introduce Kevin Leodin, who's been our champion and leader in getting us through this process, and Kevin's going to share a little bit more about the process.
Thank you very much. So, we're still on this slide, right? Yeah. Okay. So, when you guys reviewed the sustainability plan, there we go. Yeah, the goals that were developed were based on a menu of options that have been successfully implemented by our fellow Greenest Region Compact communities, and sustainability plans from other credible organizations that are vetted from our commission. We also cross-reference many of the plans in the village has already adopted or about to adopt, as Stevie has said. And so during the drafting process, we sought input from residents through a public workshop attended by more than 50 residents last year spring. We also approached local businesses, business organizations, and incorporated 2 rounds of feedback with village departments. So throughout the process, we received strong support from resident businesses, local entities, and staff for a village-wide sustainability plan. One of the things we kept in the mission statement you saw earlier is that we heard over and over again from businesses and residents is that they want to embrace green energy and other sustainable measures, but they need help. So many of the goals focus on education or connecting residents with information or resources they need to make those steps. We really do emphasize throughout the plan that partnering with other groups and tapping into existing programs from utilities, the county, the state, federal governments as much as possible, and we made it as prescriptive as possible. And so it also features many goals that our chair will talk about more.
So there are goals in the plan that suggest potential policy changes or have costs associated with them in terms of staff time or purchasing greener technologies. I'd like to emphasize that with all of these goals, we expect that they will go through the same budgeting process as any other line items in the village budget, and they will that you will consider, whether it's cost effective at that time. There may be times when some of these items are not cost effective yet. But what we're asking the trustees and the staff to consider sustainability in their decision-making at every step of the way. So that we're ready when those purchases make sense. And so, like Jen said, we're prepared as these prices go up. We're ahead of the curve and we're not playing catch up. So the plan, one of the great things about doing this planning process is we've been able to, I think, do we have? I don't think we have a slide for this, but we've had so many achievements already in Brookfield in terms of sustainability. The restoration work at North and South Kiwanis Park, the bioswales throughout the village, and other successful flood mitigation strategies, our 42-year run as a Tree City USA community, our Soul Smart Bronze designation, many sustainability educational events over the last 8 years, and even before, the village's continuing commitment to promoting biking and walkability in partnership with organizations like Cycle Brookfield. Brookfield is already way ahead of the curve compared to many neighboring communities, and we've gotten wonderful feedback from our neighboring communities who are excited and want to, follow suit with this planning. Adopting and implementing the sustainability plan would further cement our role as a sustainability leader. You can flip through. I'm not sure if we have another. Oh, I'm a little ahead of myself, but that's okay. So the plan is broken into 9 focus areas. Do we have a slide for the focus areas?
Mm-hmm.
That one. Oh, there we go. And we have 118 actions and outlines who the champions or partners for each of these actions might be. And it's designed to really create achievable, affordable steps for village staff, local residents, businesses, and institutions to work together towards meeting the village's climate commitments. We basically have kind of broke down some of the bigger climate commitments you've made in these earlier earlier agreements and tried to make them bite-sized. I'd like to give you a brief overview of each of the sections and give you an opportunity to ask questions if you have any specific questions of us. The land and water sections have many complementary goals, but they build on the village's ongoing work to manage stormwater, enhance green spaces, and improve water quality. For example, developing an urban canopy management plan and identifying gaps in the canopy to maximize stormwater management, clean air, and cooling benefits for all residents. Also developing programs to educate and support residents' efforts to collect rainwater through rain barrels or rain gardens. Do any of the trustees have questions regarding the land or water tabs?
Yes, I do actually. I got to change my glasses because I'm getting old here. So in the water tab, couple items like the rain barrel program. I didn't see that in the accomplishment. I know that we had was it $65,000 or $60,000 rain barrel program that we had, and I believe there's an ongoing rain barrel program. I just wanted to highlight that to maybe that could be put in there as a success or an accomplishment or an ongoing item. And another thing I wanted to ask about was
The water meters, under the accomplishment, said that water meters, we changed to electronic water meters. We already had electronic abilities. They were RF-based, which required on-prem infrastructure. So what we actually did was we changed it to a cellular communication, which in turn allowed the village to reduce our carbon footprint by eliminating the infrastructure required to support that.
Okay, great.
So I just wanted to point that out, that I would probably change that. I had sent that same note over to Trustee Kaluzny as well, so
Okay, great.
somehow that could be reworded in there. That's what we're actually doing with
exactly.
that.
That's wonderful. Thank you. We'll be sure to
That's all I
update
have for that.
those. Wonderful. Anyone else?
I had a question. Number one, this was really a great read. I enjoyed it. Actually, it wasn't boring at all. But I was just curious. I know that the village already is planning for lead service line replacement, and I was just wondering. I didn't see it in the water section, and I know they already have a plan, so maybe that's why you decided not to include it. So, but I know it's going to be a big challenge, and I know just from professional experiences that I think getting the private side replacements done might be difficult, and it might be interesting and good to include some educational events or some kind of outreach to residents to encourage them to participate, and maybe there's other factors too. But I was just wondering if that was an option to include that in the plan among these lots of actions.
That would be great. That was actually something we took out kind of late, sort of because we kind of were on the fence of whether, okay, is it done because we've committed and it's going to happen? Should we put it in achievements? Or should we have a line item that just reinforces that this is happening? But I like your idea of maybe what we should say is having an education plan involved in that implementation so that people know what's happening and they can, know what to expect.
Yeah, and I'm happy to talk to you about.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, we'd really appreciate that. Great. Anybody else?
I don't have any questions, but I did want to say hi.
Hi.
You're doing a great job. Also, I just wanted to share that there was a lot of work to look at what, and I think Bridget mentioned this, that the plans that we looked at in the Greenest Region framework covered lots of different things, and narrowing them down to figure out what was best for Brookfield took a lot of work. And so thank you to everyone that I know is out there, and some folks that aren't here tonight that participated in that. So there are things that we could still miss, and so definitely feel free and share if you see something missing that you'd like to see. This is the first 5 years of a plan. It'll have 5 more years and 5 more years if we decide to move forward. So these are the things we thought we could tackle more sooner than later. So we did take a lot of things out that maybe some others could be potential in the future.
Yeah, we could add back. We're kind of thinking it's going to be a living document. So we'll talk a little bit more about the process, but that we'll get reports from staff, each department, each year, and then come back to you in July of each year to give you updates on how it's going. And then revamp the plan each year, with taking out accomplishments, and we can highlight those and maybe some of the newsletters and things like that. So as we're going, we're kind of constantly moving forward with it. And there might be things that come up as we go. I mean, the technology is changing really fast, and new programs are becoming available from the state and federal government. So we want to be nimble and able to take advantage of those as those come along. And then just some of the other tabs, air and energy are focused on breaking down how the village can achieve its climate commitments, such as reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We have goals regarding ensuring zoning, coding, and permit staff are aware and prepared for new technologies like heat pumps and geothermal. The village is way ahead because you guys have already done the Soul Smart program. So basically, we're saying the logical next step is making sure we're ready for all these other technologies coming down the pipe. Did anyone have any questions specific to air and energy?
I did. Specifically, I think on the cross-boundary emissions action, I think the Conservation Commission was the village liaison, and I was just curious. Cross-boundary pollution is so difficult, and I'm wondering if there are other ways. And maybe this is just something we can add in the metrics or something, in terms of our village government collaborating with other village governments to address issues that is leading to this cross-boundary pollution. So another thing to think about, and again, we can talk offline,
Yeah,
but I was
definitely.
just,
Definitely appreciate that.
that one seems like a very big hill to climb.
Yeah,
but
and I think
an
you've got
important one for sure.
expertise that could really help us with that. Yeah.
Jen?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, I think part of that is referring to work that's being taken on by the Cross Community Climate Collaborative, C4, of which we are already a part. And so there are measures that are being set up for the 15 communities that are a part of that collaboration. So I think that's a part of why we referred to it in that way.
Okay.
And I
yeah,
couldn't
that's helpful.
agree with you more that that is going to be very challenging.
Yeah, thanks.
But I like that it's, even though it's challenging, it's in there and it's identified, and we'll do what we can. It's great.
Yeah. So, and then another tab is about mobility. This board has been really committed to that. We've had great community partnership from Cycle Brookfield, improving pedestrian safety at intersections, cycling infrastructure, all things that are sort of in the works already. Waste obviously deals with reducing solid waste through recycling programs or potentially composting. I know that's stuff that's also been on your radar. Do you have any questions about mobility or the waste tabs?
I have, on mobility, we did bring up the Arden. You did point out that, thank you, by the way, for all the work. I do appreciate it. So I don't want to, I don't want to feel like I'm criticizing. I just,
Part of the process.
But in the mobility accomplishments, it mentions the bicycle lane on Arden. However, not the one in Washington. I know it
Oh,
was
yeah,
last
that's
minute.
new,
So I
yeah.
think we should add the one that's on Washington because that's a huge item.
Absolutely. That's great.
then-
I think we could have had a whole report of just accomplishments. It was such a fantastic thing to be able to say, wow, we're doing so much already.
Right, I don't want to lose sight of those accomplishments. And then on the disposal items, one of the items personally that I like in there, because you never read about this or find this anywhere else, and pharmaceutical disposal is such a major issue and such a difficult item, especially with those when you're dealing with like a elderly who has passed and you're like, what am I supposed to do with everything? I ran into that issue and it took me weeks to figure out how to dispose of like my parents' pharmaceuticals. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't find information on it. So if we had anything to that, I fully support that one. That is a huge item. Thank you.
I agree. I think that would be great. Anyone else? And then I think we have two more tabs, but the Sustainable Communities is really focused on maintaining Brookfield's character as a welcoming and inclusive community and ensuring equitable access to healthy environments. For example, by connecting residents who are vulnerable to flooding, heat, or air pollution with resources to help. Some of those might be village resources like tree planting program or the 50/50 flood program. But it might more often be connecting people with outside resources. Utilities often have aid programs for this. There's also energy conservation programs. And residents, when we have these events like sharing education, we've had 50 people or more turn up. People are really eager to get this information. So we think the village can really be a good conduit for that information. And then finally, economic development focuses on working with local businesses to identify ways they can be more sustainable. We met with the Chamber of Commerce and they were fantastic. They were very enthusiastic. They really want to get involved. They really want to switch to green energy. They want to reduce waste, but they need some help finding the resources and sort of streamlining some of the processes so they know where to go to find reputable information and how to best do this. So is there any other questions about those two tabs?
I love the inclusion of the youth representative on the Conservation Commission. I think we could probably even do that before 2026. It's a
Yeah,
great idea.
we would love to do that. One of the things we hope for is to add a youth liaison who could work with the schools. The schools are also really clamoring for this, and it makes a lot of sense for us as the village to organize. So if one of the RB's Eco Club wants to do a no idling zone by the school, well, it would make sense for us to have, if we're going to do it at one school, to have a consistent policy across those. And then we also wanted maybe ask for another commissioner who could be a liaison to the business community and just help us to work with them more closely.
It's a great plan.
I also love the idea of a youth commission. I do have a question about what the commission means by cultural vibrancy in Goal 1. I guess I'm having a hard time deciphering it from, values and identity, community identity. And
Iris, do you want to chime in?
So that language came from the Greenest Region Compact too. So that's their second framework. And so it is broad for a reason because I imagine they had a lot of deliberation on the language. But it could be any cultural artifact of our own town that could be broken down to our history, to the traditions we have, but also the aesthetics of it all, which I think is very important for sustainable communities. So, for example, like we were just talking about the zoo, I would say that's a cultural, vibrant, part of our identity, but also things like Kiwanis, Salt Creek, and when you think about like heritage and ethnicities as part of Brookfield, I would count that as well. So I kind of hope that helps.
It does. I hesitate to, because a lot of these actions, it helps for you to explain it because a lot of the actions don't scream culture to me by the more traditional sense of the word. And maybe we can talk offline. I'm just curious as to whether these maybe could be put into other, I hesitate to use the word cultural, but I can see where you're coming from, but I'd like to discuss that one further.
Of course, yeah. Being inclusive is, it crosses the line of the sciences into the social, and I know I'm not great at that, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question along those lines? So in quite a few spots in here, there were items that would say, we want to educate residents and educate underrepresented residents. So, but they're still residents. So that one kept throwing me off. I mean, like, we're just educating everybody. So do we have to specify anybody outside of just residents?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a language issue we can talk about. I think the one thing we want to make sure is nobody's left out.
Understood.
And that we're making sure the people who need the resources most are getting it. So how do we make sure that, the messages, like, so if we have older residents who aren't, say, on Facebook, are we getting the message out in other ways that they can find it, so that they're not being left out because the messages are flying past them in cyberspace or things like that. So I think that's what we're trying to get at, making sure that we're not leaving anybody out and that we're thinking inclusively about the groups that are going to benefit from
There
the
could be
information.
language barriers or
Language.
cultural
Right.
barriers.
But I
whatever
mean,
you
they're
wanna
still
call it.
residents. That's what I was getting to. It's just, so by saying it, it's almost like getting caught up in that.
So there's a practical reason for breaking out a little bit. Like, for example, in energy, the programs that we would recommend for disadvantaged, underrepresented groups, like go to LIHEAP or IWAP for the energy assistance funding, because they would qualify for income.
Okay.
And versus other ones that are more general. And so those, like, I grew up on those programs as a low-income family, and so we put that in there for equity reasons. This is easy to forget, and also practically, they're two very different tasks. So I hope that's can be accommodated for the board.
I guess it would just be a wording thing at that point to try to better explain that. And then, could you elaborate? It's on an earlier tab, and it was about eliminating all gas-powered equipment by the year 2030. I
Yeah.
believe it is. And the next is that coming up with an ordinance to do so, or actually eliminating everything by 2030, and then throwing in that case. So, just like you, I also grew up in a low income. So the first thing that comes up to my mind is, how would I be able to afford that if I was, still in the family that I grew up in? And how would I be able to afford to just change over and go away from that? I mean, will we be thinking about offsetting costs? Will there be, there's got to be some kind of financial offset to do so. And then in on top of that, we have large lots of land in Brookfield that has to be cared for. Would we then require our commercial businesses to also do that same thing? So, I mean, it's just not as easy. I don't know if it's just do we help to educate people and help to push towards zero, or are we going to put our foot down and saying it's all going to be gone in 5 years? Because I don't know if I could do that myself.
Yeah, we were very careful in the language for that to say consider, whether we can do ordinances. There's lots of ways to go about it with education too. And some of this is sort of happening organically. A lot of people, as their, equipment becomes obsolete, are purchasing the new, electric mowers and gas or electric leaf blowers and those sorts of things as they become financially feasible. But I think there's lots of ways we can get around that. And that's why we want to have a process where we're considering it working with businesses to figure out what's feasible for them, what their timelines are for doing this. So really, we're talking about, let's start thinking about this to get our hands around it, to figure out the best way to do it. Some other towns like Evanston and I think Oak Park have bans like on specific equipment, like leaf blowers. And so there's ways we can look at what's been done by other villages, what worked, what didn't work, what were the problems and those sorts of things, and learn from those experiences so that whatever we decide to proceed with is gonna work for our community and for everybody. And I think education is a huge part of it too. I mean, we've done a lot of these neighbors helping neighbors events and people love that. You know, like maybe you're worried about switching to electric mower because you don't know what the ins and outs of it are, how to purchase one, or, you know, you want to hear from other people who've had that experience and what were the pros and cons and that sort of thing. So I think there's a lot we can do in the education front while we're sort of trying to understand what the policy options are, what's going to be workable for us.
Okay, thank you.
I think Bridget too is going to talk about how we move forward with all of those items on an annual plan, so they won't just show up here. Certainly, there'll be board actions involved, but also I would just say that, you know, one of the reasons, and I'm so, you know, the board has committed to some other things like being part of the Cross-Community Climate Collaborative or being part of the Mayor's Caucus Environment Committee for so long, is that we're not doing this alone, and there are great resources at our fingertips to ask those questions. As Bridget mentioned, find out what other people are doing, what's been successful, what hasn't for different communities of different types and sizes. And so it's, you know, we're going to use all of those resources in helping to make those decisions, and being part of those networks, I think, is going to be super beneficial to figure out what's best for us moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The whole document was very well done, very detailed. There's a lot of work, and I really appreciate everything that the Conservation Commission did here.
Thank you. Thanks you so much. You know, I wanted to give, all the commissioners have spent countless hours on this and shared their expertise. We're very fortunate to have the makeup of people we have had over the last 2 years. I did want to, you know, say a special thank you to Kevin for just bringing his expertise on the operational end of how to do a plan of this magnitude with the team we had. I want to thank Jen Nelson, who, although she's a more recent addition to the team, she's worked with municipalities and really helped us drill down and get really achievable goals, because that was one of the hardest things for us, was to figure out, like, what can we do? What is a metric that we can achieve and measure? And so that was huge. I want to help, also thank Iris Overstreep-Strupp, who put together this professional-looking document and has lent her communications expertise to it all. I've worked on professional publications my whole life, and we have a very professional looking plan here because of her efforts. So I really wanted to thank her and all the other commissioners who've really worked together as an incredible team over the last 2 years. And our, of course, our trustee liaison, Katie Kluzny, and Victor Jana, our staff liaison, who've also been really helpful, and Stevie and the village manager as well. Thank you. Okay, so one of the, if the board chooses to approve the plan, one of the next steps we'd like to do is create a sustainability landing page for the website so that we can start to house all these resources, and that can be easily referred to by staff, and that we can share in some of these educational events. And we mentioned potentially adding a couple of liaisons. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I had a chance to talk to Katie before the meeting, and I thank you for getting this into us, and staff for sharing it early. You know, we often don't get our board packets on Thursday. We got this a little bit earlier because there was so much there, and I mean, my simple reaction to it was, wow. I mean, we're kind of famous for having a lot of plans, and I think that's a good thing. I know it's a good thing. Sometimes people criticize us for having so many plans, and we've paid for and had outside organizations do comprehensive plans and other plans for us, and this is right up there with any of them in terms of the detail and the reference to other plans and in the action steps and the timetables. This is very, very impressive, and I appreciate, you know, the historical background that Stevie gave to kind of get us to show. You know, I think a lot of our board members know how we got here, and it always kind of came up in, you know, budget discussions or planning sessions we had about there was a slow, steady drumbeat for, you know, making sustainability a priority when we would have these outside consultants come in and ask us what our priorities were. This board and, prior boards, and I want to, there's, members of prior boards that were a big part of this too. Trustee Conroy was a big advocate of sustainability issues, going forward, and other board members. So it's very satisfying to see this come forward and the amount of work that came into it. And, the night I was in the room for the Kiwanis Woods meeting, I commented about how there must be something in the water and the air here. We have so much natural, I know it's not natural, it's expertise among our residents and our volunteers. That night I said it when I saw the materials, and just with the members of this board and your commission and the volunteers, we have so much expertise in this area. I know I'm kind of the envy of my fellow mayors in other towns, because it seems like we grow expertise here. And it's not just the expertise, it's your willingness to donate so much time and energy into this. So on behalf of myself and the board, thank you. I'm very excited about this. You asked if, I can never prejudge anything if the board adopts this, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be adopting it. We're going to be talking about the next steps going forward. But I really appreciate you bringing this forward tonight. And if you're okay, I know there might be some questions from the audience, so could you, if there's any questions or
we'd be
comments, can you help
happy
us field that?
Sure, absolutely.
And, normally at the end of the meeting, we have a public comment period, but and I'll come back to the village board at the end. The village board will have the last word, but is there any member of the audience that wishes to address the village board or anything about the plan, or have any questions or suggestions? Don't be afraid. Yes, Alan?
Alan Goodcase, 8940 Shields. Brookfield is really fortunate to have such great commissions, and this commission is near and dear to my heart, and I've been involved with environmental issues pretty much most of my life, and even served on a commission here in town with the first recycling commission. But it's just a wonderful thing to have, as President Garvey said, the expertise and the wonderful work and dedication that's been put in to this plan, and it's just a great thing. And the other great thing is that I'm very, very happy to be in a town with people who, staff and board members who are truly interested in environmental issues, and it's just a wonderful place to be for that reason. And that's really all I had to say.
Thank you, Alan. Anyone else in the audience want to make any comments at this point in time? Questions? Yes. I couldn't see whose hand went up there. It's kind of my perspective here, so.
So yeah, I'm Wyatt Widmer. A lot of you might know my face. Obviously, I live on Sheridan Avenue. Obviously, I'm a little biased towards this plan, as I provided a little bit of assistance with it, and I just wanted to address the idea of really what we're going into this for is very close to my heart, because I consider myself one of the inheritors of Brookfield. And there's a few other people in the crowd today who are as well. And this is the future that we want to see for this town. We're the ones that are going to be taking care of this place and of everything that we love here. And this is the way we want to take care of it. I also want to say that a lot of how we're going about that is going to be largely through incentivization, not regulation. This land management, I'm a land manager myself and an ecologist, and I can tell you that almost all of these ecosystems that are present in Brookfield, that were present in Brookfield, can perform the tasks that we have to develop extremely expensive technology and infrastructure for at many times the efficiency and much less the price than what anything we can develop can do. And as much as we've lost of this, I really want to prioritize and stress how much this plan prioritizes teaching people how to figure out, how to diagnose what their land needs and what it can do for them, try to see that potential and how to make it happen. There's, this is a lot less about trying to tell people what to do and a lot more about trying to teach people how to make their ecosystems work for them and how, people and their ecosystems can improve each other's quality of life. It is very, very solid ground that I'm speaking on this from, and I really hope to see a lot of the village come to learn about it too, the way that we have. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you so much. And the education component was mentioned several times tonight, and it is key. And I mean, I think there's been an excellent job done with that already. I know a lot of the events you have, there's always an emphasis on education, and quite honestly, it's impressive when you have 50 people turn out for an event on something and then you have, you made the point of just neighbors talking to neighbors about some of this stuff where they trust. And I think there are a lot of people who are kind of maybe just on the edge that they want to do something, they want to know how to be more in tune with some of this. And then when we have, residents like yourselves, they're neighbors who have the information and can share it in a way that's understandable. That's a tremendous benefit, so. Anyone else in the audience? Yes?
Hello, my name is Mayana Nelson, and I'm a senior at Riverside Brookfield. I've lived in Brookfield my whole life, so this is really exciting to see a plan like this starting to come into the village. So I first want to say thank you so much to the Conservation Commission for creating this comprehensive plan. And then thank you so much to the trustees and the board for already having so many sustainability initiatives, such as joining C4. And it's really exciting to see it as, again, this is the future that I'm going to be taking. So thank you guys so much. So I've been volunteering for environmental stuff since I was a kid, and I've been going to places like Oak Park to help with waste sorting stations in their communities at events such as that. And I'm really excited to start seeing this come to Brookfield. And I think this plan is super important as it really helps to keep this going in the future. So it goes past this board, and that in my future, we're still working towards these goals. And I think that that's super important to have a plan set in place to help reach these comprehensive goals and to make sure we're on target to reach our national and state initiatives. And I think that it's super important also to have these local actions and see how these local actions, and if every community has plans like this and we're setting role models for other communities, that's how we're really going to make this global change that we need to see. So for our community to be at the forefront of this and to have a plan like this that can inspire other communities to also have similar plans. I think it also sets a really good example for the high school. And I've seen many communities through a sustainability organization that I'm part of who have high school sustainability plans as well. And I think that having this plan in the community already that could help encourage and support the high school and other sustainability initiatives, and also hopefully provide a framework so that the high school can also potentially come to sustainability plan. I think that being able to have a youth commissioner is also amazing, as youth voices are super important to hear. Sadly, I'm a senior, so I won't be able to serve as that, but I think that it's really important to have these youth voices representative, as, again, this is our future that we'll be taking, and it's important to have leaders who are also ready to make this change. And so kind of going back to the urgency of this plan and making sure that we get it in place and we get these actions started so that we can see real change and we can start making change now and keep it continuing to grow. So again, thank you so much for having this on the table. I really hope that it'll be approved and that we'll start seeing action in the community soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. And there's several members of this board, we've talked about it, and the idea of adding a youth commissioner, a youth liaison, and we've actually, several trustees have appointed or approached me about creating a youth commission from the village board and getting more people involved, because you are the future. You are, what we're doing this for and going forward. And it's, myself and some of the old time board members here are very excited because, we can think back to Alan mentioned the Recycling Commission that started off as just a small little group years and years ago, decades ago, as a recycling commission. And I think a lot of the things that you're seeing today just grew out of that idea that there was people that were looking beyond just what they could do for their own selves, their own property, and look at the larger, that led into other things. And it led, we talk about how many years we've had Project Nice and, whatever anniversary of it is, Project Nice. These things start as a small little project and a small little seed. And I think we're already pretty far along with that already. But I agree that this, we're adopting this plan is a big step. We've already come a long way, but this is something that, if and when we adopt this, that it'll be a challenge for future boards to pick it up and run with it and carry it and make it grow. The fact it's like we work our budget process. We talk about 5-year budget plans and planning out 5 years and every year updating it and things. That's something that we're going to do with this, and we will challenge future boards, and you will challenge future boards to keep this going and make it a priority. So, anybody else? Any comments? Do any board members have anything else they'd like to say at this point?
I do. I just wanted to chime in with everybody else and say thank you so, so much. This plan absolutely blew me away in so many different ways. The detail and the quality and the incredible professional thinking and research that's gone into this is really impressive. It makes me really, really proud to be here and be a teeny tiny part of it. But I got to say, I think this plan and all the little pieces of it, I really feel like it's going to motivate the community. It's going to motivate individuals. It's going to motivate other organizations within town and businesses and nonprofits and clubs and I think that's what's going to help carry this forward, that you had the foresight and the vision, and we're going to make sure that these things happen, which is our job, right? And that leadership component here, I absolutely want to know when and where and how I can go and speak and share and expand this through other communities in the region and the state, because I think that this group has really shown leadership on this, and I think we have to help carry it forward for Brookfield and beyond, because obviously we're a smaller piece of a big picture here when we talk about global health and environmental wellness. So thank you so much, and I'm really excited to see where it goes and who else jumps in. And your group has grown, I've seen over the years, and all of this other talent that you've brought in. We've had a lot of different professional expertise over the years, so it's really exciting to see. Look at the size of this group too. I mean, it's to see that come together and really pull this off is really impressive. So thank you.
One last thing.
Sure.
I would like to point out, so the Conservation Commission and what's being done isn't just a lot of speak and a lot of documents and plans, et cetera. For those of you who might watch this on a video, or those of you in the audience, if you are unaware, if you wish to take action and wish to do something and help it along, the Conservation Commission does have monthly restoration or work days, et cetera. And if you join their mailing list, they do have a mailing list. Please go to the Conservation meeting. What is it? March 18th, you said, the next one? March 18th, at 7 p.m. here. Come in, get your name put on their mailing list so that you can be notified when their next Conservation Day is or Restoration Day is. I don't want to just call it a work day, because it's actually a lot of fun. And a couple weeks ago, for instance, Wyatt led an excursion into South Kiwanis, where we were mapping out trees and plotting out where trees are and identifying trees of significance for Brookfield. And I believe we saw some that were as old as 220, 230 years old back there. And so you have a lot of really great events and great projects that you can become part of. So don't just talk about conservation, you can go out there and be part of it and learn more about how to conserve in Brookfield.
I have more to say.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Please.
I just wanted to, again, thank the commission for the countless hours. This is like the ultimate volunteer project. I don't know if anyone else would have ever taken this on as like, I'm going to do this in my spare time, but not even just a volunteer project, but a volunteer project within the guise of village government, which means this group kept within the Open Meetings Act, which is why it takes a long time and it takes perseverance and persistence to meet once a month, has planned special meetings to be able to get together and do this by the book and do this, within the rules of village government. So it's one thing to do a volunteer activity. It's another thing to do a volunteer activity with some bureaucracy involved. So thank you for that continued persistence and commitment into doing that, the way that we needed to. We did asset mapping. There was a whiteboarding project to end all whiteboarding projects that then lives on in a virtual whiteboard. The number of spreadsheets that Kevin made, and we all read every line of it. So I just want to share, it was a very large undertaking over multiple years and many meetings that went past 8 p.m. here in this room and elsewhere that we were able to take space. But it just, it's huge. It feels like a reveal party for like a baby that you guys have been cooking up for quite some time. But I just want to thank the village board for, sharing your feedback. If there's more feedback, I know that we'd like to adopt this in the future, but we're definitely, I know Bridget mentioned, willing to come back, and the commission willing to come back with another version of this plan with some of the edits. And so we'll meet with village staff about that. But I just wanted to thank again, the hours and dedication to this, both president and past commissioners. So thank you.
Well, we would be remiss too if we didn't throw a huge shout out for the ultimate champion of all these types of efforts right here, Trustee Kaluzny.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry I made this big project.
No, you're not.
And Trustee Cote, too, was our former liaison.
Oh, that's
He's been a very solid
Thank you. It's
ally
very
for
kind
our
of you.
commission for a long time.
Anyone else on the board want to say anything before? And I'll just finish with the thank you also. Thank you to all the commission members, the volunteers that made this work. I want to thank village staff also. They were excited actually about this. They've heard the board. They listened to us when we talk at policy meetings, and we actually able to have those meetings where we talk about planning and policy. They were able to clearly, read the room that the board was interested in this, and then when we gave them direction, they were happy to meet with you. And I know there was a true back and forth feedback process about this, and I think that's when things work best. So all the village employees and staff and volunteers that made this happen. And again, the village board, and I'd like to recognize there's prior members of this village board that were key in this also. So everyone that kind of had a role in moving this forward, I want to say thank you to, and it's an exciting time. I look forward to. I'll wait for feedback from staff and Trustee Kaluzny about when we should bring this back for possible adoption. I will note that certain trustees will not be here in 2 weeks, so I don't want to do it in 2 weeks. I want to do it at a point where we can have a full village board here. But I'm excited about bringing this forward for a board vote and making it formal and making it, starting the clock on the 5-year plan and getting it going. So thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item. And again, you're welcome to stay, but you spend a lot of nights in this boardroom. So if anyone doesn't want to stick around, that's fine. We're going to keep going with the board meeting, though, or the committee of the whole meeting. The next item we have is a discussion of Planning and Zoning Case 2403, a request for a text amendment to Chapter 62 zoning, Section 216, stationary table, to include business support service as a permitted use in the SA2 Neighborhood Mixed Use District. Kate, I'm going to turn it over to you. As always, we have very detailed memo in the packet, but I'd ask that you kind of brief the board and the public about what we're talking about tonight, what the recommendations were, and what the next steps are.
Thank you, President Garvey and trustees. Well done on reading this very long text amendment description. So this case, 2403, was heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission at our last meeting. It is a application brought forward by one of the property owners in the SA2 district, which is described in our planning documents as a low-scale district focusing on pedestrian-friendly retail and service uses on the ground story. This district somewhat uniquely involves 4 properties. You may have read in the report, but they're commonly known as the John Shine Law Offices, Urban Mutt, Taco Hero, and then Zubar. So these 4 properties make up the entire SA2 zoning district, and SA stands for station area. So the commercial use classification from our village code talks about business support services as uses that provide personnel services. It lists some specific ones, or communication services to businesses or consumers. And some of these typical uses listed include employment agencies, some sort of obsolete uses, meeting consumer needs, caterers, and photo developing labs are part of that category. A business support service use is allowed in the districts I listed there. You can see that that's quite a number of our commercial districts, and in SA1, which is our downtown area, or a portion of our downtown area, I should say, as well as the I1 industrial district, this type of use is classified as a special use. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this case. They heard the explanation of the reason for this application. It is summarized in your report. Essentially, the Taco Hero business, due to market conditions and demand, shifted to a predominantly catering type use, and in their application described that they wanted to do the right thing. This business, these business owners, Jose Ortiz and Roger Diaz, do own that property. Jose is actually here this evening to field your questions, but in the planning and zoning case, went the wrong way, sorry. The request was deliberated, and the commission in their discussions talked about that some of our long-term planning documents really contemplated uses in this area to be very pedestrian-oriented, and then other commissioners in their deliberations spoke about some of the challenges this district has had in terms of its economic stability and some of the aspirational goals for this district perhaps not being fully realized decade over decade. And so that argument spoke more to the district having stable occupancy and sales tax revenue perhaps as more of a priority. So the outcome of that was that the Planning and Zoning Commission did forward a favorable recommendation for approval of this text amendment by a vote of 5 ayes and 2 nays. I'm here to answer your questions. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Kate. And so the vote was to make business support services as a permitted use in the SA2?
That's correct.
Okay. Board members have questions or comments?
Kate, a couple things. I guess first off, the sales tax revenue still does apply to the catering,
It does, that's correct, yes.
but the places for eating tax would not apply to that.
That's also correct, yes.
I'm trying to recall, going back maybe 4 or 5 years ago, what we changed here. Did we overlay the district with something, or do we add additional uses? Because the law office, at that time, the law office wasn't allowed to be in that district.
You're correct. My understanding is that at that time, the business or professional office use was added to the category of uses permitted by right.
So do you think going forward with the zoning code update, we're looking at this again? Because we keep making these tweaks to this district.
While I can't anticipate the outcome of the zoning code update, I will say that relative to other communities and just in general, there's certainly discussion around the 20-something zoning districts we have in this village being excessive.
The number being excessive.
The number
But I'm
being
going-
excessive.
We made some major changes to this district as well as the district where the food pantry is, just down the
The
street.
food pantry was an overlay.
Okay. But then we came back and we tweaked it for the law office. Now we're tweaking it for this. I guess my point is, maybe we comprehensively look at this again, instead of each time making this text amendment or an overlay to it.
That certainly is one of the driving forces as to why we're undergoing a zoning code update.
Other questions or comments from the board?
No.
And I mean, Trustee Ketchmark, to your point, I do remember, making those changes, and I mean, things have changed over the years and even in the past decade where we try to adapt to, scenarios and things. I know this applicant's tried to make the best of what they can with this use, and, the market has determined that basically this catering services is the most beneficial use that they have. So, at this point, as we go through the zoning update process or change process, we might be able to come up with a more comprehensive plan, but to allow this business owner to move forward, I think we need to address this particular text amendment application now, and while we work through the process, and whatever the goal of that ultimate zoning rewrite is, it might kind of eliminate the need to do some of these things going forward. It's my thought.
President Garvey, I do agree with you on that, and I agree with this text amendment. My point was, prior to us making the changes, the overlay in the other district, making the additional uses here, we came forward with a plan that maybe we should have reviewed more at that time, because it seemed like it was probably too restrictive. And, at the same time, with the overlay district, we made those businesses basically obsolete because we wanted to see multifamily in there. And unless someone wanted to come in and knock down the whole block and put in multifamily, these businesses couldn't be there. So my point is, as we go forward on this, even with the zoning code update, we have to be thinking forward to what we're looking for and not be overly restrictive, because what happens is we see this as being a good thing to do, and then we keep tweaking it each time.
Other questions or comments from the board?
No, I agree with you as well.
I mean, the applicant is here, you don't have to say anything. Is there anything you wish to say to the board, or you don't have to get up and speak if you don't want to. If you'd like to, if you'd just like to state your name for the record and.
Jose Ortiz. Good evening. The reason for us doing this is because we just want to have a sustainable business, and we found something that finally works in that area. We purchased a building, we invested a lot of money. I moved my State Farm office from Forest Park into an office in the back of that building. We plan to stay here long term. We love Brookfield. We love the restaurant business, and we love to put smiles in people's faces. But let's just face it, the restaurant business is tough. And we've had the restaurant since 2021, and we've never given up. And till now, we still open twice a month because we want to make it work. And thankfully, catering came by, and it's been working, and now we've become a corporate caterer. We're catering hundreds, even thousands a week. It's pretty impressive what we're doing now. And we're grateful to be here, and we want to stay here. And we're just trying to do the right thing. We've adapted, we've changed our business model, and now it's working. And
We as Trustee Ketchmark, I know we've had to adopt and change some of our goals and visions for that area, and I appreciate you bringing the issue forward. I mean, your catering has gotten some pretty positive reviews I've seen on social media, and we appreciate you trying to make it work. And we'll put this up in 2 weeks for the village board to vote on the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is a discussion of case 2404, request for special use permit to operate a commercial vehicle repair and maintenance business and a special use permit for accessory outdoor storage at 8800 47th Street. Kate?
Thank you, President Garvey and trustees. This case involves a property that's in the I-1 Industrial District. It is a 3-pin property. You may recall the one parcel, northernmost parcel, was rezoned into the I-1 district as a result of an application by the previous owner. This site was purchased in December 2023. by an LLC affiliated with trucking logistics companies under the parent company Magnum Commercial Holdings LLC. And so the use of commercial vehicle repair and maintenance does come up as a special use, requiring a special use under our code. And so their maintenance relates to repairing their own commercial vehicles under their trucking logistics operations. They did take the time to explain to the Planning and Zoning Commission that they are, they have sites throughout the Chicagoland region. For this particular site, they attested that 5 vehicles per day would be repaired on site, and no trailers were expected to be attached to those trucks. The outdoor area that is currently a gravel area is intended to be paved. They do intend to replace the fencing and not add any outdoor lighting. There was public comment at that meeting, and they also attested to the repairs occurring with the garage doors closed, site access coming off 47th Street primarily, and in addition to all of that, as per our code, they would be subject to the stormwater management requirements, and they were aware of that and willing to comply. So the outcome of that Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, or this specific application request, was that both requests for the use of the outdoor storage of the temporary outdoor storage of vehicles, as well as the special use for the repair and maintenance of commercial vehicles, were found to meet the special use standards that are in the code. So the Planning and Zoning Commission issued favorable recommendations for both special use requests, and both of those favorable recommendations had unanimous votes with 7 ayes and 0 nays for both.
Thank you. And the conditions that they put on there are part of the recommendation? I mean, in terms of paving specifically, the rear?
Yeah, thank you for asking. The commission did wish to put those conditions on there so that they were memorialized. The other condition that I failed to mention was that there were deliberations about similar uses, perhaps overreaching in how they utilize the site. So the other condition put on there was that no vehicles could be advertised for sale on that property, from that property.
And so the recommendation that the board is looking to decide if they're going to adopt is that, the 7-0 vote, but with the fencing requirement, the paving, and no truck sales, those are all conditions, correct?
That's related to the outdoor storage use, and then the special use for commercial vehicle repair and maintenance did not have any conditions specifically attached to it.
Questions or comments from the board?
Is there a definition of what's meant by short-term or temporary parking?
So that was and by the way, the applicant team is also here this evening, should you want to raise any questions to them directly. But the concern that was deliberated was if vehicles would hold space at the site for extended periods of time, and this particular property owner and business operator illustrated the case that having their trucks operating is money. And so because this is not a public commercial vehicle maintenance and repair facility, that there's an urgency to what they're doing there. So they did indicate that this would likely be perhaps overnight, generally not much longer.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
One thing I wanted to point out was there were a lot of conditions that were considered in this case as it was being discussed. And so it got a little confusing, I think, at the point of actually making the motion. When the motion was made and voted on, after that point, the commissioners pointed out that they had deliberated about doing this in a timely manner. And so they asked that some sort of language be added into the ordinance when it's passed about, along with the conditions about the fencing and the paving being taken care of in a timely manner. I think, and one last note is, the language of the conditions is slightly different in the meeting minutes versus the packet. I think what you've got in the packet is what I would like to see, and what I think is the wording is better. I think the minutes say something about all of the property is to be paved.
Yeah,
where we
all
don't
unpaved
necessarily
outdoor
want
areas, right.
everything outdoors paved, but the language in that you have in the packet is preferred.
Noted, and understandably, those are draft minutes, so.
So I was, in regards to the wording, actually, it said no truck sales on the property. Should that not just say no vehicle sales as opposed to just truck sales?
It could also say that as well, yes.
I mean, the language from the minutes on that was no signage indicating the resale of vehicles on the property. I mean, I think I understand your point that, you know, not just trucks, any vehicles.
Any vehicle, yeah.
That's a high-traffic area sometimes, and people, so maybe that language from the draft minutes might be, how do you feel about it, Trustee?
Yeah,
Hunt?
oh, absolutely, sure.
Okay, but I agree the language about the paving in the staff report is more clear than what's in the draft Planning and Zoning Commission minutes. In terms of the point that Trustee Hendricks raised about the, you know, time frame, I mean, I kind of will leave that up to staff, but I think obviously we'd want that to be a condition that it's done. There's a clear time frame, a reasonable time frame, and when to the paving and everything should be done and the fencing, so. If that's, will that language be in the item that comes back to us at the board level?
Yes, we can, the village attorney and I can establish that. I will note that the commission discussed the duration that a building permit is issued for, and that is 1 year. Time is of the essence for this operator, so that may be ample time. One further consideration would be the special use could become effective at the time that that's complete, could it not, Attorney Durkin?
That's correct.
Okay, well, we'll have that, you know, actually, I'm going to give, the applicant is here, or someone's here, again, you don't have to say anything if you want to address the board, it's an opportunity, but you don't have to, you've heard the discussion, you've heard this, does the applicant wish to say anything at this point in time? You don't, again, you don't have to, you've heard the board's discussion and things, but if you want to say anything, if you just identify yourself for the record.
Hi, good evening. My name is Joseph Imburgia. I'm the attorney for the applicant. And I just wanted to thank Village Planner Portillo. Really thorough staff report. We don't have anything really to add to it at this point. And we just thank you all for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So
one additional
sure.
question, and so to clarify, is it no truck vehicle sales on the property or no signage for truck vehicle sales?
We could make that as clear as possible and put the condition that no vehicles may be advertised for sale on the property, and that would include signage or a physical vehicle.
Is that the intent? I mean, I thought that's the intention, but is that?
Yes, I believe so. Although one of our commissioners who had that suggestion is in the audience and could speak more clearly to that if he prefers.
But I mean, the language of no signage indicating the resale of vehicles on the property, is that language sufficient? That's the.
I don't know what the intent was. I mean, you could have 50 vehicles for sale, just have no signs there, and online they're advertised for sale. I mean, was the intent to not have
that
vehicles?
was the intent, yes, to not have signage. Do you, yes, we're getting a nod, okay.
So your thought that just if they put cars out there were selling, but they didn't put signs on them, that they would be,
I don't know. I don't know what the intent was.
I think the intent is, so if we, and again, our trustee Hendricks and members of the commission can correct me, but sometimes in these high visibility, high traffic areas, people think it's a good way to advertise vehicles for sale because a lot of people drive by. We don't want it to become a venue for that, so.
So it's more so what's in the minutes than in
Yes.
the staff report that says no truck sales on the property.
Yeah, I think the language, no signage indicating the resale of vehicles on the property.
And if I might, to be totally frank, that would become a separate use defined in our code, use stables.
Okay.
If the vehicles were, if they were to start selling vehicles. So that would not be something allowed with what we would be approving.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, anything else from the board? Okay, we could put this up in 2 weeks also. Oh, sorry, counsel?
Thank you. My client was just wondering what kind of time frame you guys were considering adding to this?
In terms of time frame for us addressing it or voting on it?
Well, I know voting on is within 2 weeks.
Correct.
But you're talking about the time frame for the contingencies.
I was going to rely on staff to talk to you and come up with a reasonable time frame with permits and, stormwater management issues and things like this, so.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I don't think that anyone wants it to be onerous on the petitioner, but there was a lot of resident input at the meeting, and lots of neighbors were out there that they do have concerns about the property being in good shape, and I know that the petitioner intends to get this property in great shape, so I think staff can handle that.
Yes, thank you. All right, so we'll put this up on the March 25th agenda for board action. Thank you. Kate, thank you, and thank you to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I know they've been very busy. We'll move on to the last item of the evening, a presentation of the 2024 capital improvements projects. Derek's going to come speak about how inconvenient he's going to make it traveling around Brookfield this year.
Good evening, President Garvey and members of the board.
There we go.
Now we go. As President Garvey was mentioning, we're about to embark on what I think is probably the largest capital improvements year that we've had since I've been here. So wanted to come before the board and go over each of the projects that we're working on and then give a little summary at the end. So I'll start out with the first project. What do I need to? Yeah. Yeah. There we go. Look at that spacing. Okay, first project is the 2024 water main improvements. Includes the installation of 6,500 feet of water mains. This is in relation to the water rate increase that was passed in 2021, so we could begin replacing our 100-year-old water mains. Project is a $4.6 million project and is being entirely funded with an IEPA low-interest loan. Second project is our first lead water service replacement project. The village board back in 2022 approved a water rate increase. This is our first project. We were able to get $7.55 million from the IEPA. This is a zero-interest 30-year loan that we're obtaining for this project. Next project is the Burlington Avenue improvements, very large collector route project. We have a $4.27 million project. We were able to get a few different sources of funding. We're getting $2.25 million from the SDP fund, and we're getting another $1.1 million from the MWRD stormwater funding. Current village share is $920,000, although we expect this to come down because this is eligible for contingency funding, and we think we should be able to get at least another $300,000.
Derek, on that, where is that coming from? Was that additional STP funding or?
It is. It's part of the SDP program. So contingency funding, real quick, we've talked in the past, but there are basically 11 councils of mayors in the area to distribute the SDP funding, and Chicago is also a part of that. The region always wants to make sure they spend all of their SDP funding. Anytime one of the other councils or Chicago doesn't spend its funding, becomes eligible for the other councils to go ahead and apply if they have shelf-ready plans and are able to get out for bids. So right now, what we've been told is they're projecting about $100 million in fiscal year '24 in contingency funding to be available. So we're looking to take advantage of that for our Burlington Avenue improvements, and when we get to Brookfield and 3,700 grand, we're also looking to take advantage of it on that project.
And is the MWRD stormwater funding, that's a grant?
Yep.
Correct?
Yes, yes, and we've received that funding already.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay.
These contingency funds, it's just always, I don't know, we're just spoiled here. I'm always amazed at, governments and agencies giving back grant money because they don't have the plans or the shovel-ready or the match and stuff. And, we've been the recipient and the benefit of it. I don't know that we've ever given anything back in terms of funding. That's it.
So we have one of the smaller transportation councils. Their mark is about 3 to 3.5 million a year, and we hit that mark every year, like as you've mentioned. I think Chicago is one of the bigger ones when they have these large projects that might be 20, 30 million, and we all know working through IDOT can be difficult and projects fall behind schedule.
Sure.
And I think that's part of what we're encountering here.
Whatever it is, just keep it happening.
Yeah, it's worked well for us. Again, we'll go over it later, but having these shelf-ready plans is what allows us to take advantage of that funding. The next project that we have up there is Brookfield Avenue, which includes the 3,700 block of Grand Boulevard. I split this into two projects for this report. The first is the resurfacing improvements. That's actually programmed for 2026, but it's eligible for contingency funding in fiscal year '24. We're going to go out on the IDOT letting September of this year, which we'll have construction in '25, but we're using fiscal year '24 funding for it. The estimate of cost, it's resurfacing about a mile of pavement. Estimate of cost is $1.89 million total. SDP program funding through contingency is a little over $1.5 million, and the village share is about $378,000. Second part of that project, again, what we did is we approached the West Central Council of Mayors, said since we're getting all this contingency funding, I know you don't normally fund streetscape improvements, but since this doesn't come out of your 3 million annual mark, could we use that because it's eligible for federal funding? And they did agree to that. So we discussed at the last couple committee meetings that we'll be doing streetscape improvements on Grand Boulevard between Brookfield Avenue and Grant, also on Brookfield Avenue from Prairie to Arden. Estimate of cost just for the streetscape improvements is $1.385 million. The SDP program funding is a little over $1.1 million, and the village share for all of those improvements come out to about $277,000. We came before the board earlier this year. We've got the 2024 parking lot improvements project. We're looking at reconstructing 2 parking lots, one at the northeast corner of 31st and Park and one at the elevated tank. Estimated cost is $890,000. We have applied for 2 MWRD funding in the amount of $290,000. Village share would be $600,000. If that grant funding comes through, construction would likely take place in 2025. The Congress Park train station, the north side improvements, that's paving, drainage, and lighting improvements. Estimated construction cost is $420,000. We were able to get half of that, $210,000 from Invest and Cook funding, and the village share is $210,000. That construction will take place this summer. So just as a quick summary, total construction, almost all of this is happening this year, other than Brookfield Avenue and Grand Boulevard, but the total construction is a little over $22 million. Total grant funding is about $6.5 million. Total loan funding is a little over 12 million. So between the grants and the loan, we're getting about 18.5 million we're bringing into the village this year. Helped us leverage a lot of work this year. I did put a map together. I know these are hard to view on the screen. With the lead water service replacement that we're doing. Yeah, thank you for blowing up. If you could go to the left a little, Stevie. So the lead water services that we're looking at are in yellow, blue, and orange. And the way we prioritize those is we created a 5-year street paving program with Public Works. And we're trying to get out in front of those street paving projects with our lead water service replacement. So this gives you an idea of the streets that may be included in the next 5 years. This is something we'll provide to Public Works and they can put up on their website for the residents to take a look at. I want to talk a little about the keys to the success. It's been a real team effort. First off, we present these grant opportunities to staff, and staff has just been very aggressive about trying to leverage additional grant funding for these projects. We also have had a lot of cooperation from the board in pursuing the grant funding. They're very supportive. And we couldn't do any of it without the good financial position that we're in, because all of these grants require some sort of a match. And the IEPA loans, those are directly attributable to the water rate increases that were passed in 21 and 22. The other thing that has helped is the board has been willing to approve advanced engineering, so we have shelf-ready plans. That allowed us to leverage little over 12 million in EPA loan funding. As you know, we were getting bypass funding, so it's the fact that you approved the engineering ahead of time, and when some of those other projects were approved for funding last year weren't ready by January 1st, we were able to jump in line and claim this funding because we had the engineering done. And it's also what allows us to get that contingency funding, because we couldn't start the engineering the same year we want that funding. That's got to be substantially completed when we find out that that funding is available. So we do have some upcoming grant opportunities. IEPA loans, the next round of funding, the call for projects is March 31st of every year. We'll go out for the next round of lead water service replacement. We also have another round of water main replacement that includes 7,000 feet of water main replacement. We have several projects that are on the program for STP funding. Ogden Avenue Phase 1 and 2 engineering is programmed right now. The Phase 1 report is being worked on. We do have Phase 2 engineering. We applied for that a couple years ago, and they have that in their program for 2027. So Phase 1 and Phase 2 funding is already taken care of for that project. In roughly 2029 or 2030, when we're ready for construction, the challenge will be to find that construction funding. I think the board's aware of the Des Plaines River Bike Trail. Phase 1 engineering continues on that. That's another project that's funded with STP funding. We also have, it's 31st Street and Maple Avenue intersection improvements. We had a presentation at the last committee meeting, but Phase 1 engineering continues on that. And then we have 4 resurfacing projects that we applied for with the last round of applications. Maple and Prairie Avenue resurfacing, both of those from 31st Avenue to the railroad tracks. Washington Avenue resurfacing from Prairie Avenue east to Gulf Road by the high school. And then the Brookfield Avenue resurfacing, which is from Maple Avenue to Prairie Avenue. Those are all 4 to 5 years down the road. If we decide to advance engineer and move up and go for contingency funding, we have that option. They're all in condition where they don't need the resurfacing this year, but they're all on the board to make them eligible for contingency funding should we want to pursue that in the future. And then the last 2 is we've got the 2024 CDBG application. The board approved a resolution in support of that tonight. And we do have a Safe Routes to School application that we brought before you a few months ago. We haven't heard back on that. We expect to hear back on that in the next few months. And that's it. That's all we're doing this year.
Nothing else?
You always wait to do these, the last item because you're tired by now.
When you talked about getting, advanced funding for going earlier on some of these projects, I don't know if Doug looked down to start, like, looking for money, or just looked down so I wouldn't look at him or something,
Take a swig out of this.
the slide that you had about the total cost of the projects and the combination of grant and loan funding was, the thing about the loan funding, which obviously is key, is it's either the low interest or zero interest IPA funds, so that's saving us. When people hear loans, obviously got to pay them back, but the combination of the low interest and no interest that we're able to qualify for by having the water rate increase and having these projects ready to go was key. So these are things that the board determined and the federal government determined that we need to replace lead water service lines. So the fact that it's mandated that we do this, it's something that we're going to have to find a way to do anyway. But because we're ready to go on this, we got in early and we're able to get a lot of that funding, which saves us a lot of money, which is what it's all about. So.
Right, so as President Garvey had pointed out earlier, it's amazing how many municipalities miss out on funding and opportunities because they don't have pre-engineering, advanced engineering done, and the plans laid out. So all the advanced engineering that we do approve, and then the plans, whether it be comprehensive plan, or whether it be sustainability plan, as it's seen tonight, all these plans help us put Brookfield in a better position so that when funding and grants come open, that they are there ready for us, and we could jump in line, as you said, when other municipalities are not prepared for it.
Other questions or comments from the board?
It's an exciting year. Thanks, Derek. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you, Derek. Thank you to staff and the board for putting us in this position. So,
There's also a new place on the website for residents to follow up on, to follow along with these projects, right?
There
Do we
is.
want to put in a plug for that?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. Bob Hughes, our new management analyst, worked with Vincent Smith, Director of Public Works, with Derek through Hancock Engineering, and our GIS analyst to create a story map of our capital improvement projects. So not only does it provide a map view of, similar to this slide, where projects are taking place, it is interactive, so you could select any portion of Brookfield mapping to view the capital improvement project, background scope, point of contact, and it will be updated to include updates. Burlington Avenue being our current project that's going to be receiving potentially weekly updates. It'll be added to that site so all residents and visitors can see current up-to-date information on all of our capital projects.
And they'll also be able to see if they have lead lines to their houses, right, on the GIS.
We do not have our public portal for service material for lead lines yet, but that is anticipated to be put on our site as well.
Will the ELERT project also be up there on that page under capital projects? I know
Yeah.
it's not one of these like infrastructure projects that
No,
we're
but it
touching
is
on
all
here,
village
but-
capital projects, not to exclude parks from street improvements or mains.
Great.
Derek, you started out mentioning that this was unprecedented in your time here. That's been quite a few years.
Thanks.
But if you think about that, we had years where we had done $4 to $5 million in street improvements, and that was a huge project at that time. And we're looking at $22 million over the next year-ish or so. What's really interesting, though, is we've been talking about is how this has all come together. Between the grants, between the water rate increase we had done several years ago, between, Doug keeping us in good financial shape so we have our money to make our matches, but it's everything coming together that allows us to do this. So, it's historical in that way, too, for the village. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's the last item we have up on the committee of the whole. I'll once again open it up to public comment. Does any member of the public wish to offer any comment at this time? Okay, hearing none, is there any need for executive session, Tim?
Nope.
Okay. At 8:44, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting.
So moved. Second.
The motion was made by trustee Gahuli, second by trustee Kaluzny. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ketchmark?
Aye.
Trustee Cote?
Aye.
Trustee Hendricks?
Aye.
Trustee Miramatsu?
Aye.
Trustee Gahuli?
Aye.
Trustee Kaluzny?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're adjourned at 8:45. Thank you for coming.